UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely.
Bonjour, Bula, and hello. My name is Lice Movono. I am a multimedia freelance journalist based in Suva, the capital city of Fiji, here in the Pacific Islands. I am so very excited to be here and honored to have been asked to give a little bit of insight into lessons that I learned covering the COVID-19 pandemic here in the Pacific and using radio, but on social media to do that work. I am ordinarily trained as a print journalist, having worked for a newspaper company owned by News Limited here in Fiji for about 10 out of the 22 years of my career. But when the internet became quite prevalent and quite useful in Fiji, I quickly jumped into that space and started to work in and around the digital space as well as on social media. So in the past 5 to 6 years or so, I have been a foreign correspondent for ABC News Australia as well as Radio New Zealand, the two biggest media companies operating in the Pacific region. And so my work involves producing multimedia, so that's audio, visual, as well as print, depending on whatever the client needs. However, radio is my main primary mode of production. As the media environment around the world develops, consumers of news or media users are changing the way they send and receive information and news. The challenge is for traditional media and media practitioners to adjust to these current trends while continuing to provide independent, accurate, fair, and balanced information. As such, they must make the transition from a traditional model of supplying the news to the more interactive news environment that the digital space offers. In Fiji, during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the small island nation was hit by its second wave, media trends were tested by the growth of Twitter as a social media platform. At the height of the second wave of COVID-19, in Fiji, Twitter introduced Spaces, a live audio feature which enables journalists to use the traditional technique of applying radio production methods with the added ability of being able to interact with their listeners. While journalists must continue to abide by journalistic ethics and standards, practitioners on Twitter Spaces have captured what is quite possibly a new way to integrate traditional and new forms of media to reach its audience. As the second wave of COVID-19 swept across the Pacific, the technical nature of the information necessitated the use of social media, which many people in the community had turned to in order to make sense of jargons and difficult topics. As a Pacific digital media practitioner working in the social media space over the last year, I'd observed many lessons and collated them which could reposition the power of radio in the Pacific and in the era of social media. This experience can also have wider implications on the coverage of future crises.